Standup Memories. I'm Peter Bales. And here we go. That is Jackie Martling, and he's ready to roll with our next episode.
Tell me when it's okay for me to chime in.
Chime in anytime.
Okay. Well, I never know.
Oh, it's fine.
You know, you're doing the introduction. I know
know.
you like to get a little space for yourself.
I'm
You know,
fine.
a little.
I'm comfortable.
I'm Peter time. You know.
Let's try it again.
Why not start with some Rodney Dangerfield?
I love it. Everybody loves Rodney.
There is a joke that he did. This is as non sequitur as anything could be, and he did the joke one time in the middle of his act when I was with him in Las Vegas. I had never seen him say it before or since. I don't know if it's on any album, and I don't even know how it worked into his act. He said, "Yeah, there was a waiter on trial, and the judge said not guilty, and after the judge said not guilty, the waiter stepped off the stand and went around and put all the chairs on the tables." Which is just such an inside restaurant joke. And I said, where did that come from? I don't know. You know, somebody used to do it. You know, something just popped in my head.
Now, you know Rodney Dangerfield.
How ridiculously hip is that?
You know Rodney Dangerfield infinitely better than I do. But I was at Dangerfield's when he used to go in there and work out his Tonight Show sets. And you would see in a little over a week how they would shape up into flawless beauties. And he taught me something, and he would talk about this. He said the set that he did when he came out had to be funnier than the panel when he sat down with Johnny. He said you put your A stuff up front because it's actually harder to do the stand-up than it is the panel with Johnny laughing at everything you say.
And bouncing off the bad ones.
The band and the other people sitting there. He also, when he would try out his new material at Dangerfield's, would go up with his tried and true material, get the audience completely in line, everything's good, and then go into his new set.
And try and sneak him in.
Then he would go into his new set.
When we're on the plane, I remember he had his act, and he would take the slug 2 words or 3 words for a new joke he's going to do and put it between 2 jokes in brackets. And that's where he would sandwich a new thing. And I remember there was a joke I think somebody sent him. We did the whole thing about the joke that was so bad.
I don't think we did. What joke was so bad?
When he got mad at me?
Oh.
Because somebody sent a joke and he thought it was a great joke and he went up and it was a joke. I get no respect. You know, I was on a ship. It was sinking. They made me captain. You know, the captain goes down with his ship. But about the 3rd night, it didn't get as big a laugh. And he said, I don't know what I'm going to do about that joke. You know, the captain's dying on me. He said, you know.
The captain's
now,
dying
I don't know
on
if he kept the joke or anything. But the joke, I hate to repeat, but it was so funny. What we'd do is he got mail. So he would go through his mail because people would send him jokes. And, somebody say a guy had a hat. And he said, a guy had a tie. Now it's my joke. I wrote it, you know. And I'd say, listen, why don't you let me sit there with you and you hand me the jokes because maybe I'll see something you didn't see or I'll see a twist in it. And he trusted me. And he hands me a joke and I'm like, what are you doing? I said, this is the greatest Rodney Dangerfield joke there ever was. You think so? I said, yeah. Are you crazy? We did this already?
No, do it.
And in the middle of his act, I'm in the back, and we already had the discussion about there's nothing funnier to a comic than watching another comic go in the toilet.
Yes.
Or bomb a joke. Because if somebody bombs a joke, the distinct sounds are the sound of nobody laughing and then the sound of the comics in the back screaming laughing. So the guy on stage knows that they heard the silence, right? And he goes up and he says, oh, this girl was fat and ugly. She had a hairdresser for each armpit.
That's good.
And I screamed, and it was a little too much for the audience to swallow, to put together the fat and the ugly and the hairy armpit, and that, it just was, I guess it must have been overwhelming. I thought it was the classic ugly and fat joke combined, So I roared, and then it was quiet, and I roared again, and he, as far away as he was, I could feel the glare. What are you doing to me? Why'd you do that to me? I said, I honestly thought it was going to be your best joke ever.
All right, I want to ask
But
Jackie.
that is funny.
It is funny, but the audience decides. That's what we say.
That's
The audience decides what's funny, not ultimately the comedian. Now, Jackie's talking about a bad joke. I'm going to ask Jackie now about a piece of comedy history. And this is the funniest Rodney Dangerfield joke I've ever heard. I think he ever did on The Tonight Show. You were responsible for it. And Rodney actually blasted Johnny Carson back in his chair, laughing so hard. And you know, I think the joke I'm talking about. And it came from you, right?
The classic thing is there are very few new jokes. Just about anything you could say has been said one way or another. If you're talking about burps, farts, sex,
Right.
anything like that. And a friend of mine was in Peru. It's absolutely true story. Was in Peru selling coke, buying coke. He's not with us anymore. Jackie Radcliffe, Jr. He's just a piece of work. You know how often they say they broke the mold? Well, they really broke the mold. And I'm sure you met this guy along the way, and he was out of his mind. And he called me up, and at the time I was living with my girlfriend Lois at my grandmother's. My grandmother had passed away, and we're going to get to her. We're going to talk about my
your grandmother.
And so we're at my grandmother's house, and the phone rings like at 3 o'clock in the morning, and almost nobody had the number. And this guy, Chief, they called me Chief with no respect at all. It was it was a tongue-in-cheek Chief. Chief, wake up! You got to hear this. Now I'm doing Rodney. This is the funniest thing, guy. The funniest goddamn joke. You got to hear blah blah blah. And I could swear that he knew I had most likely gone to bed very drunk and was probably still a little drunk. So he kept me on the phone long enough that I'd be sure to remember what he said. And he said, this guy Bob, Tennessee Bob, he's so funny, he's down there, we're all so high and so crazy. Tennessee Bob told me about this girl called the Tennessee Two-Bagger. She's so ugly, not only got to put a bag over her head, you got to put a bag over your own head in case her bag rips. And I fell off my bed, and I laughed, and I howled. And at the time, Richie Miniveri, had told me he was friends with Rodney, and I'm typing up all my jokes. So that was one of the jokes I put into the 6 pages I sent him, and then Rodney called me at that same house, and nobody called. Nobody had. All her friends were dead. Nobody had that number, but I had put it in the jokes with Rodney, and he called me up at my grandmother's house, and he said, it was the funniest joke. Years later, he said it was the funniest joke I ever had.
Oh, absolutely. A little inside comedy here. Jackie's original joke, it was a Tennessee two-bagger, and I remember distinctly Rodney changed that to, she was a two-bag number. And even repeated a two. John, what? A
he took out the Tennessee.
A two-bag number. And he blasted Johnny.
He never said number. He said two-bagger. But he took out the Tennessee.
I'm gonna go back and check the tape.
Oh, okay.
Because this is a moment that I remember this joke.
Yeah, and it's funny
because
so
funny.
I was working in the
number.
studio, and the guy, some of the Alessi brothers, a famous group on Long Island, they used to be Barnaby By, and they used to tour the country. And they said that when they heard that was my claim to fame with Rodney. They said, "Oh, that's an old Southern thing that has been around forever." All these jokes have been around forever. But when you take the right joke and give it to someone, like in My Favorite Year, Peter O'Toole staggers into the ladies' room, and he's taking it out, and the woman goes, "This is for ladies." And he says, "So is this," which is the oldest joke. But in the right place, it's, and placed in Rodney's hands. So there's so many jokes that have been around forever, but, you know.
Now, but I got to tell you, again, inside comedy, comedians are very aware of when another comedian takes a joke from you and does what we call a switch. And Jackie mentioned that Rodney changed belt to tie That's a switch, and that's not really kosher.
No, that's not kosher. And I was being a little crummy, but like he changed a few things around on this joke or that joke, so that's mine now. But there's probably some degree of at some point you've changed it. But who knows? And who cares?
I remember a great comedian from back in the day, John DeBellis, did a joke. I just read a book. It was entitled Lincoln, the Man and the Tunnel. And I thought, I'm starting out. Oh, what a great joke. I'm gonna do a joke just like that. I just read a book. It was called George Washington, the Man and the Bridge. Not kosher. That's a blatant switch.
Because that's
you can't do
his
that.
joke.
That's his joke.
But as a young guy, you probably.
But you don't know. I mean, comedians starting out are likely to think that a switch is a legitimate way.
But
to
it was so crazy around 1980. I remember when I was first starting, and back in those days, like somebody on the East Coast would get a phone call and say, "Hey, this is Harry from the Comedy Store in Los Angeles. I hear you're doing Star Trek. That's my bit."
Right.
You don't lay claim to,
You can't lay...
I'm the one who does the jokes about Kansas.
Right. You can't lay claim to a topic.
You can't
is what
cast
you're
that
saying.
wide in that.
Nobody
right.
can lay claim to jokes about bad airline food.
Right, and if you're talking about Star Trek or something like that, there's a certain amount of course there's going to be crossover of people thinking the same thing or hearing the same thing.
And that, of course, is called parallel development.
Which
that happens.
absolutely
It
happens.
absolutely happens, but sometimes it doesn't happen, and we have to be aware of that.
Now, did we have this whole discussion about Bobby Flay?
I think you angered him. Correct?
No, No. This is about the naming of his show?
Yes. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, I certainly shouldn't have angered him. I don't think he's even aware.
But was it stolen? He stole it. The name.
Nobody will ever know. I mean, he wouldn't have taken it from me. He would have got it through the producer. But as you say, parallel thinking, it's a very simple switch. It was my idea for a suburban cooking show, Boy Meets Grill, which is the easiest switch in the world. But when I describe the whole story, everybody says, no, that's not as it's commonplace to you because your mind works like that. So and that's what's so hard to argue, I thought of that. It's like somebody saying, that's a great idea. I'm glad I thought. How many people told the boss an idea, and the boss says, that's a terrible idea, and 3 weeks later he says, I got an idea. And that happened to me with Howard with the E! Show. Let's put cameras in here. Oh, Jackie's lazy, I got an idea.
I've heard from more than a few comedians that out in L.A., sitcom writers will go sit in the back of the Comedy Store, the Improv, and just jot down ideas for their sitcoms, listening to the comics. And that's not right either.
Now, whose story, the famous story of Alan King going into the Catch a Rising Star and sitting there with a pencil and paper. And somebody says, what are you doing? He says, I'm helping myself. And I said, you can't do that. He says, I started off in toilets like this. I'm Alan King. I take whatever I want.
And Milton
Which
Berle,
is so wrong.
So wrong. And Milton Berle made a joke out of and recommended to young comics, just go out and steal jokes. I never got that.
But, it got to where people were doing much more specific stuff and much more pointed stuff. So, like if, Dennis Wolfberg did a Larry Miller joke, it was a lot different. Like in Berle's day, in those days, it wasn't what you were saying. It's like, who's selling it?
Right.
Right. Is it the comedian or is it the joke? These arguments go on and on and on and on.
And what comedians learn is that if your material comes from you, from your heart, from your character, who you are, you cannot steal it. You cannot steal it. And that's the way to write. And that's what Jackie's saying. Is
that's not what I do, but that's
but that is
right.
absolutely true. Absolutely
but
true.
when it comes to something like the jokes I do them, and I tell anybody, help yourself. You think, well, because when I first started, everybody thought, oh, that's the guy from Long Island who takes the jokes out of a book and goes on stage, and not knowing that I've been doing it for 40 years, right? And I was like, take a book and go in and help yourself to 10 jokes and go up on stage, and you go up on stage and tell a joke and nobody laughs. And then you tell another joke and nobody laughs. It gets lonely real quick unless you know what you're doing, and people, you laugh at your own joke. Like, what I do is what I've done for 40 years for friends and whoever, to make them laugh with no intention of doing anything except getting the laugh. That was, it was totally, it sounds like it's like you're walking around passing out dollar bills, but the point is that it was a soul searching fun. It was selfish because it made you feel good.
Uh-huh.
Now people give away money. They give away money. It makes them feel good. It's crazy.
I was accused by a comedian, I'm not going to say his name, Rob Magnotti, of stealing his joke. And the joke was, I grew up in a street where we had that one lucky rich kid with the in-ground pool. We used to show up at his house, 9 in the morning, bathing suits on, flippers on our feet, snorkels. We'd actually say to him, hey man, what do you feel like doing? And he did that.
I think you did that the first time I saw
did
you.
That back in the 80s, and now it's like probably around 2000, and he's yelling at me. That's my joke, and he did the joke almost word for word like that, and he's accusing me. And I said, no, that's my joke. I've been doing it for a long time. And he storms away. And I went home, and I went through my old videotapes, and I found a tape of me at Rascals on the Rascals Comedy Hour, and I'm in a short sleeve green shirt with brown hair and looking like I'm 26 doing the joke. And I took that clip and I sent it to his manager, and I felt like $1 million. And then
I thought you were going to say, and you saw, they scanned the audience and you saw him in the back.
I saw him in the back taking notes. Oh, man, but what satisfaction. And he did. He came up to me at Dangerfield's a few weeks later. All right, that was your joke.
And it's all that stuff's so silly.
But once you're you and confident in you, you deal with that a lot less.
Well, I'm sure if you stay with it, I'm sure you're going to get the confidence.
I'm working on that. I'm really working hard on that.
I don't need confidence. I just need to go to the bathroom. So we're going to stop.
All right. We are going to pause now.
I do need confidence. I don't really have to go to the bathroom, but I thought we should give the people a break to go live their lives for a week, and then we'll come back and play another day.
All right. Well, let's...
Do you want me to say goodbye?
Yes, you say goodbye.
Peter says goodbye.
Hey, a new episode of Standup Memories every Wednesday.
How exciting is that?
Starring me, Peter Bales, and right here, Jackie the Joke Man Martling.
Please follow us on social media. Search it out. What is it? MeSpace?
MySpace?
Your space?
TikTok, Instagram, Facebook.
Doodah.